Hello and welcome again to VW Feasts, and today we're making lasagna. Yum. Yes, the best lasagna is Nonna's lasagna, grandmother's lasagna. However, we're not Italian and the VW is not a grandmother as yet, as we know. So, multiple parts of this. We're going to show you how to make the ragu, the white sauce and the lasagna all together, all from scratch. So first, we want to get a soffritto, which is a combination of carrots, of celery and onion with some spices. And this is the base for so many sauces and so many different cooking elements that it's best to do this yourself and learn how to make it. So we add them to a pan to some nice hot oil, we season and then just start to stir. Yes, as the nights draw in and it gets colder, it's nothing quite as homely and as warming as a lasagna. I personally like the bits that are right at the edge where they go really crispy. Okay, to this we've also added some bay leaves and some rosemary, or thyme you can add. And this is to give it a bit of a flavour. Having counted it in, you want to count it out again. You could either tie this as a bouquet garni or other ways to make sure it doesn't actually stay in. We're going to try and rescue it a bit later, but make sure those don't end up in the final piece. Next goes a bit of bacon here. This is sort of pancetta or bacon. Again, we're going to render this down so that the oil, so the fat renders down and we get some of that beautiful flavour imbued in this soffritto. Once that's all ready, we then add mince, and to this we've actually used a mixed mince. The traditional Tuscan is part beef and part pork. In Germany here they have a gemischter mince, which is part beef and part pork, so it seems ideal. It seems as if they wanted us to use it for this. So in goes the mince, and we just need to make sure that's all evenly divided, mixed about, and therefore can cook like a beautiful grain. If you don't do this, you end up with big claggy lumps of meat, and that's no good to anyone. So, having browned the mince, you can see that we're actually left with quite a lot of fluid, so we're just going to reduce that down a little bit further, just to get some of that water off. Water's mainly come out of the vegetables. Now you can see that that's all gone, and this is where we're going to add back other fluid. So in goes some very nice red wine. It's always makes me cry when I see my beautiful red wine going in, but it gives an extra depth of flavour. We're actually cooking this so we cook off the alcohol. It might sound like that's a horrible thing to do, but it is what you need to do, otherwise it's too fierce. You want the flavour and not the booze. Yes, I don't understand that one either. Then we got to the stage where the alcohol's off, we can then start adding the tomatoey flavours. So first, standard tomato puree, really rich tomato flavour. And then to that, the tomatoes. And this time we've got some chopped tomatoes and some plum tomatoes. Why, you ask? Well, that's what we had in our cupboard. It really doesn't matter because you're going to cook it long enough that it all breaks down to just give a beautiful, unctuous tomatoey flavour. As always, water in the cans to make sure you've got every last bit of that goodness out. But because we've got the plum tomatoes, we need to just break them up a bit just to make sure it's all mixed together. We're making quite a lot of ragu here. This isn't what you need for just one lasagna. This will make several lasagnas. We're making batch cooking, so we could make several lasagnas or have ragu ready for just straight on pasta. As you can see, this is starting to really mix together beautifully. It'll stir around. A little steam comes up and fogs the lens. Okay, nicely. You may think the VW had particularly manly hands in that last shot. Well, no, that was me. Haha, yes, I got to do something. Yes, more steam and more steam on the lens, but now we're getting to the stage where this ragu is almost perfect. You can see this beautiful tomatoey, meaty mixture. Let's get those bay leaves out while we can. If you can't find them immediately, you'll find them later when you're spooning them around, but you don't really want to be eating bay leaves, it's not nice. Next, the pasta. You can make your own fresh pasta. We do not. We're using shop-bought pasta here, but to make the sheets easier to use, we're going to give them a quick boil, just around 4 to 5 minutes. They're still firm and usable, but they're not snappy, so they can actually be laid down properly without breaking. Now on to the bechamel, which has two parts. First of all, there's an infused milk, and into the milk we're going to put more bay leaves, nutmeg, salt and pepper, and bring to a gentle boil. We want to get all the flavors out of these elements into the milk, and we will strain them off afterwards just to make sure they're not in the final sauce, which must be a pure and creamy sauce. Bechamel is one of those wonderful sauces that countries argue about who invented. The Italians say they did it, the French said they did it. Doesn't matter, we're making it. A little bit of pepper. Bechamel doesn't actually have to have that and the milk, but it gives it an extra depth of flavour. So, once we've boiled, we pass through a sieve and into a jug, which we will keep aside for later. As you can see, out come the bay leaves and the onions. Okay, we'll speed this one up because this is making the bechamel itself. So first of all, in goes some butter into a pan, and then you start adding the flour very slowly. You're making a roux here. If you put the flour in too quickly, it's going to just clag up. So you want to incorporate it bit by bit by bit. As you can see, that butter is already starting to thicken up and to come into a bit of a sauce already. But now we go over thick and we go into more of a paste. And that's exactly what we're aiming for, but stirring all the time to cook off some of the astringent parts of the flour, but also just to make sure it's completely combined and silky smooth. And if you get tired, then what you really need to do is ask your assistant to take over with the old whisking. First of all, we add some of the milk. As you can see, that gets incorporated slowly, slowly, slowly. There are elements where you can cook and constantly stir and just slowly add, and it's all done automatically for you, but we're doing it the old-fashioned way here and just showing you how it can be done. So, making a lovely mess, but it's all worth it because the final result is a beautiful bechamel sauce. At this point, the VW really is getting tired, so what we're going to do is swap over, and I'll give it a bit of a sweep, and you can see I'm even messier than the VW. But all that extra horsepower is brilliant because you can see we get down to a beautiful, beautiful, creamy, silky, smooth sauce. And so at the end we added just a little bit more milk just to make sure it was the right consistency. Okay, now making lasagna. Multiple layers are the things that make it particularly pleasurable. So we'll start off with a layer of the bechamel, just a thin layer at the bottom of our lasagna dish. We'll spread that out to the side so there aren't any big pockets of it. And then on goes some of our beautiful ragu. We spent a while taking some of the herbs out of this. As I said, we found the bay leaf and we had to pick a lot of the sprigs of rosemary out of this. But it was worth the effort because you don't really want that clogging up your mouth. Then as you can see, these pasta sheets are much easier to work with once we've just boiled them for a little bit. A little bit sticky though, so be careful how you use them. And then put them down as an extra layer over there. And what you can do is, if you're clever, you can then cut the pasta just to make sure you've got the full coverage. So we're using both a parmesan and a mozzarella in the layers. We make a nice cheesy lasagna. In fact, as you cut slices from this, you see the cheese come out in strings. It's really quite gorgeous. Definitely not a diet food, but definitely a winter comfort food. So, next layer of white sauce, and then we carry on layer after layer until you reach the top of the dish. We're just going to smooth all that to make sure it's a nice thin layer. Excuse fingers. As I said, I like the bits right at the edge of the pasta where you get this beautiful burnt bit of pasta caramelized and then that unctuous sweetness of the beautiful ragu. So once you've got about 3 or 4 layers, then you get to the final bit and just put some of the cheese on the top just to give you that lovely crust when it comes out. And again, we're using both a combination of mozzarella and grated parmesan. Finally, into an oven, and have ready several hungry people, because this is going to be gorgeous. When it's ready, you'll see the top bubbling, start to see that toasting of the cheese on top. That is what lasagna should look like. Let it cool a little bit so you don't burn everyone, but then cut out your required piece of lasagna. Don't worry about what it looks like, because it won't be sitting on the plate for too long. It's going into your tummy. And there you have it. Lasagna. Yummy. Enjoy.